Everyone saw him as complete trash at fighting. Yet the Demon King personally invited him to become the strongest commander under his rule, Commander Zero. After all, even 12 demon generals fighting together couldn't bring down the hero. Yet this human somehow killed that same hero by himself. But what nobody knew was that, on the surface, he looked as powerful as a god. While behind the scenes, he was actually a frail wreck who coughed up blood the second the pressure got too high. He became Count, a name feared across the Empire, and the Demon King's most trusted right-hand man in the demon realm. The craziest part was that he himself had no clue how overpowered everyone thought he was. So this man made an insanely bold decision. He personally handed the Demon King a resignation letter. The moment he saw it, the Demon King slammed the desk and shot to his feet in rage. Even the papers on the table were blasted into the air and smacked right into the man's face. "You're seriously going to abandon me and leave on your own?" But in the very next second, the Demon King completely switched up and grabbed his legs. "No, absolutely not. Is there something in the castle you're unhappy with? Or did your subordinates treat you badly? Don't tell me they look down on you because you're human." The man only replied calmly, "You're trying to get rid of me." That line nearly made the Demon King jump out of his skin. "Not me. Why would I ever want to get rid of you?" Then he grabbed the man by the shoulders and shook him in a panic. "Is this because I haven't sent you to the front lines lately? But with the state your body is in..." Before he could finish, blood suddenly trickled from the man's nose. At once, the Demon King's roar thundered through the entire castle. "Royal physician, get Commander Zero's doctor in here right now." While the doctor examined him, the Demon King stood beside him the whole time, visibly on edge. The doctor said, "These are internal injuries he suffered during his battle with the hero, and they've already left lasting complications." The instant he heard that, dark energy began boiling off the Demon King's body. "I didn't call you here to tell me the obvious. Within 10 days, find a way to heal Demon's body. And if you fail, you know what happens next." The doctor immediately grabbed Demon's arm, preparing to take him back to his room for treatment. Seeing that, the Demon King could only tell him, "We'll talk later. For now, just go back and focus on recovering." Lying in bed, Demon overheard his subordinates talking outside. He took the hero's attack head-on and only ended up this injured. That's Commander Zero for you. But the truth was nothing like that. That's the only human in the demon realm. Demon had been born with a frail body that could make him pass out from even the slightest pressure. And somehow, despite that, everyone had mistaken him for an overwhelmingly powerful monster and pushed him all the way to the Demon King's inner circle. For now, he could still blame it on after effect from fighting the hero. But if anyone ever found out he was just naturally weak, he was dead. No matter what, Demon had to escape the demon realm and finally live an ordinary life. Just then, his adjutant, Ed, came rushing into the room. A second later, Ed told him he had brought back a mirror cube from the human world. Ed was one of the very few demons Demon could actually relax around to keep him from dying of boredom. He often traveled to the human world and brought back interesting little things for him. "Damn it, what in the world is supposed to cure your after effects? You stepped in and stopped the hero for the sake of us demons." Ed's expression turned downright sinister. "Even if I have to torture somebody for answers, I'll find a way to heal Lord Demon." Demon immediately shut that terrifying idea down. Demons really were scary. Still, there really weren't many demons who genuinely cared about him the way Ed did. And the Demon King treated him well too. That alone put a weird kind of pressure on Demon. And more than anything, he just hoped the Demon King wouldn't get the wrong idea and do something outrageous again. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the castle, the Demon King was carefully studying Demon's resignation letter. I can never tell what's going on behind that quiet face of his. From the very first time we met, he's been impossible to predict. Right in front of all demonkind, he killed a hero who was about to self-destruct. Sending someone that useful to a place that dangerous was basically throwing him away. If it were me, I never would have sent him there to die for nothing. That's why I sincerely invited him to join the Demon King's army. Now that I think about it, I've been favoring him ever since. But I can't just hand him some random assignment because of that. And then, all of a sudden, something clicked in the Demon King's mind. He immediately barked an order to his subordinates. "Gather all the commanders. I'm calling a command meeting." The second the idea took shape, a grin started spreading across his face. Yeah, Demon should be happy with this. So just like that, even though Demon had only just been resting, he was suddenly told to attend a commander's meeting. And the moment he realized that meant every commander currently in the castle would be there, his heart nearly stopped. Ordinary demons were scary enough already, and now he had to face the commanders too? He had barely reached the door when he heard whispers from inside. "Wait, has he already recovered? Feels like we haven't seen him in forever, but why does he look so mad?" A demon woman passing by looked at him in confusion and whispered, "So that's the legendary human. This is my first time seeing him in person." A man beside her patted his companion on the shoulder. "I was there when he killed the hero." When the Demon King asked who he was, he answered in the calmest voice possible. "My name is Demon Arid." Come on, there's no way you'd forget a name like that. That IT sounds more demonic than most demon names. But what Demon had actually said back then was Dwyn Hart. The second they noticed him approaching, everyone hurriedly covered their mouths. "Careful, Lord Demon looks like he's in a terrible mood today. I heard Lord Demon hasn't been able to fight lately, so the stress is getting to him." Hearing all that, Demon was speechless. Somehow, as time passed, the misunderstandings around him had only gotten worse. Sure, those misunderstandings were also the reason nobody dared mess with him, so that part worked in his favor. But if this kept going and the truth came out, he was dead before he escaped the demon realm, he absolutely couldn't let anyone find out how weak he really was. So Demon walked up to the soldiers guarding the meeting room. Pretending he wasn't scared at all, he forced himself to say, "Open the door." The moment the doors swung open, he saw the commanders gathered inside, along with the Demon King himself. As soon as Demon stepped in, the Demon King covered the smile creeping up his face and said, "You're here." Then Commander Number 1, Jekker, told him, "Your seat is beside His Majesty." Commander Number 3, Ashid, gave him a nod, though his real thoughts were different. "No matter how I look at him, he seems ridiculously weak. But if everyone says he's strong, then I'd love to test him myself." Commander Number 6 was just about to sneer, "So a little merit gives you the right to show up this late?" When Commander Number 4 quickly cut him off. With unease twisting in his gut, Demon took the seat beside the Demon King. Surrounded by so many commanders, the pressure alone was enough to make him want to run straight back to his room. But the second he noticed the wine set in front of him, his mood instantly lifted. After all, meetings were one of the few times he could freely drink alcohol that was hard to come by in the demon realm. That alone was enough reason for him to drag himself here. But after taking a sip, he realized it wasn't wine at all, that IT was grape juice. Everyone else has wine, and I'm the only one getting grape juice. That's blatant discrimination. The moment Demon's expression darkened, the entire room fell dead silent. The Demon King awkwardly scratched his head and admitted in a small voice that he'd personally ordered it. Hearing that made Demon's heart pound even harder. Had the Demon King finally realized he was useless, so now he wouldn't even waste alcohol on him? Was this whole meeting actually meant to deliver his final sentence? Right then, the Demon King smiled and patted him on the shoulder. "Don't be mad. This meeting was called because of you." Then he ordered Commander Number 6 to give the report. So the 6th commander explained the reason for the meeting. The number of monsters has risen so sharply that the 12th Legion alone can no longer handle the situation. Half the smaller villages have already been trampled, that we've evacuated the remaining residents to walled cities for shelter. But there's no telling when those cities will come under attack too, so we need more force deployed to hunt the monsters down. So that's why the 12th commander isn't here. Did he die? He got taken out by mere monsters? Aren't those things just failed creations? Listening to the uproar around him, Demon had no words. Still, it really was shocking news. Monsters were failed creations made by the Demon King, beings with no reason or restraint, driven only by instinct and desire. And the 12th Legion had been beaten by creatures like that. That wasn't some ordinary demon force. But what did any of that have to do with Demon? And then the Demon King looked at him with obvious amusement and said, "Don't worry, Commander Zero's Legion will be sent as reinforcements." Hearing that, Demon nearly jumped out of his seat. But the Demon King only smiled wider. "Go blow off some steam, I knew you'd want this." Demon could only force himself to stay calm and answer, "My body hasn't fully recovered yet." Hearing that, Ashid, the 3rd commander, muttered under his breath, "Don't tell me he just doesn't want to go." But Jekker, the 1st commander, thought it over for a moment and said, "If anyone else had said that, I'd assume they were making excuses because they didn't want the mission. But if Commander Zero says it, then he's obviously suppressing his urge to fight and calmly judging the condition of his own body first." The moment those words were spoken, Ashid, the 3rd commander, looked at Demon with open admiration. So he's not just overwhelmingly powerful, he's got incredible judgment too. Man, now, I want to test myself against him even more. Then the Demon King looked straight at him and said, "I'm not asking you to force yourself in a battle. I'm asking you to command the entire Zero Legion and maybe blow off some stress while you're at it. Something like this should be easy for you anyway." With all those expectant eyes fixed on him, Demon realized he could no longer bring himself to flat-out refuse. So he forced himself to speak up and told everyone he was willing to go. But in his heart, he was thinking something else entirely. With or without the Demon King's permission, he was going to escape this cursed demon realm. And just like that, he still ended up being dragged to the front lines. Afraid his escape attempt would be exposed too soon, he had no choice but to move his plans up. Sure, life wouldn't exactly be easy even if he made it back to the Empire. That place had a lunatic emperor who'd sent him straight to the Demon King, and an older brother who would love nothing more than to kill him. But even so, that still sounded better than getting caught in a war between monsters and dying some pointless death out here. Pulling back the curtain of the carriage window, Demon looked outside at Vice Commander Ed and silently worked out a plan. The Zero Legion was strong, and Ed was strong too. If he just pretended to fight for a bit and then slipped away, they'd probably clean up the rest on their own. With that thought in mind, Demon pulled out the bottle of red wine he had secretly hidden away after the meeting. Then he popped it open and started chugging it down. If he was going to die anyway, he might as well die completely wasted. Before long, the group arrived at a village that had already been ravaged by monsters. The place was crawling with them. Countless monsters stood there, glaring at the group with savage hunger in their eyes. Seeing that, Ed immediately ordered everyone under his command to prepare for battle. The moment the fighting broke out, a giant demonic wolf lunged straight at Ed. In that split second of danger, Demon suddenly flashed in front of the beast and killed it in a single strike. Then, with a cold look in his eyes, he pointed his sword straight at Ed. "Are you an enemy too?" Seeing his own commander level a blade at him, Ed froze on the spot. Was Lord Demon drunk? But where in the world had he even gotten alcohol? Panicking, Ed hurriedly blurted out that he wasn't the enemy. Just then, Demon's gaze shifted to the side, where another giant wolf came charging into view. Before he could fully react, it slammed him with one massive blow and sent him flying. The hit was so brutal it nearly knocked him unconscious on the spot. But because of that, he finally confirmed one thing for sure. These things were definitely the enemy. In the next instant, Demon sprang back up and hacked the wolf in front of him into pieces. Under his near-frantic assault, the surrounding monsters didn't even leave behind complete corpses. That brutal scene stunned everyone watching on the battlefield. Even the monsters arriving from the rear began to recoil in fear after seeing Demon's berserk rampage. Meanwhile, back in the Imperial capital, a man in black stepped forward to deliver his report. According to the soldiers assigned to scout the Demon Realm, Commander Zero took part in the recent monster extermination. They say he was every bit as terrifying as the rumors claimed, overwhelmingly powerful and brutally ruthless. Hearing that, Emperor Edward suddenly let out a laugh. "I'm starting to miss someone. That said, if the Demon Realm has already begun making moves, shouldn't we be taking action too?" Then he looked at the man before him and said, "I want to give you a chance to earn merit. Try becoming that kind of talent yourself." Elsewhere, Demon suddenly jolted awake from his sleep and realized he was back in his room. The moment he opened his eyes, both the doctor and Ed were already standing anxiously at his bedside. They told him he had been unconscious for an entire day, and that all of his treatment had already been completed while he was out. Ed added that when Demon was brought back, he had been covered in blood and scared everyone half to death. But Demon had no clue what they were talking about. More than anything, he wanted to know when exactly he had even gotten back. Ed then explained the monster hunt ended without any problems. After that, those terrified creatures all ran for their lives. Since Lord Demon had collapsed, we brought him straight back to the Demon King's castle for treatment. Hearing that, Demon was stunned. The mission ended that fast, and I seriously have no idea what even happened. The doctor then told him his condition was most likely temporary memory loss. After all, the injuries he suffered were severe. Right then, a memory flashed through Demon's mind. Him getting blasted away by a monster's massive blow. This didn't feel like amnesia at all. It felt more like he had blacked out. This rate. It looked like he had gotten drunk, staggered around, and then been brutally beaten up. Not long after that, the other commanders started filing into the room too, surrounding him with excited faces. "Your heroic deeds have already spread through the entire Demon King's castle. They're saying you wiped out half the monsters by yourself." Hearing that, Demon nearly choked on his own blood that he took out half the monsters alone. Who in the world started that ridiculous lie? After hearing about Demon's heroic feat, Ashid, the third commander, immediately said that once Demon had fully recovered, he wanted to spar with him. Seeing that terrifying monster of a man seriously asking for a sparring match, Demon's whole body went numb. If he agreed, wouldn't his pitifully weak real strength be exposed on the spot? Then Ashid added sincerely, "I've long heard of Lord Demon's greatness. If you'd be willing to offer me even a little guidance, I'd be honored." Looking at the three eager faces in front of him, Demon found himself unable to say no. But the moment he imagined taking even one punch from Ashid, he felt like he'd be smashed into pieces. So all he could do was lower his head awkwardly and say, "I probably can't spar with you." The aftershocks from that intense battle with the monsters still haven't settled yet. So my power no, that's not it. I mean someone might die, damn it. How am I supposed to say this? But right then, Jekker, the first commander, seemed to reach a conclusion of his own and spoke in a low voice. I understand now. The reason Commander Zero refuses to spar is because he's worried about the person facing him. Refusing you this time is for your own good. Besides, the battle only just ended, in his current state. It would be even harder for him to suppress his excitement once the spar begins. In other words, once that duel starts, it probably won't end until one of them is dead. Hearing that, even Ashid lowered his head and sank into thought. Even I may be confident that I can hold my own against any commander in a spar, but I still wouldn't dare say I definitely win. So, this is the kind of person even His Majesty personally acknowledged. With that in mind, Ashid gave Demon a respectful bow. As much as it pains me to admit it, I can't say with confidence that I'd win or even survive. I'm not prepared to stake my life on a fight against Lord Demon. It hurts my pride to say this, but I still appreciate your consideration. Seeing that, even Demon froze for a second. He really hadn't expected the guy to be talked down that easily. Ed, standing nearby, looked at him with sparkling admiration, as expected of Lord Demon. You can even make battle-crazy commanders act this polite. Demon had no idea how things had somehow turned out this way, but at least the sparring issue finally seemed over. But the second he thought that, Ashid lifted his head and said with total sincerity, "I have no intention of giving up. Once I've gained enough strength and reached the point where I won't die so easily, I'll come ask you again." Demon had just started to think the whole thing was finally over, and then Ashid hit him with that. He seriously wanted the guy to just give up already. After everyone left, he collapsed onto the bed, and only one thought remained in his mind. No matter what, he had to escape the demon realm. Later, once everyone assumed he had already gone to sleep, Demon quietly slipped out of his room. The more he thought about everything that had just happened, the more annoyed he got, and he kicked a stone on the ground as hard as he could. Unfortunately, that kick sent the stone flying straight into the head of a demon standing in the distance. The moment he realized that, Demon turned pale and looked over in horror. Why did it have to fly over there of all places? But the demons on that side, after noticing Demon, immediately bowed in unison. "Good evening, Commander. If we were being too loud and disturbing you, we sincerely apologize." Then they quickly added, "There was just a lowly succubus blocking the way. So we were teaching her a lesson that will handle it right away, so she won't trouble Lord Demon any further." Looking at the succubus, trembling in fear, Demon recalled hearing that succubi sat at the very bottom of demon society. From the look of it, these guys had been ganging up on her. And after seeing Demon's serious expression, the other demons apparently assumed he was angry, so they hurriedly excused themselves and left. Demon had no clue why they suddenly backed off so fast, but at least they were gone. Still, if he just walked away too, what would happen to her? Besides, this was the first demon he'd seen who looked even weaker than he was, and for some reason, that made it hard to ignore her. The succubus was so terrified she didn't even dare lift her head, in her heart. She trembled. They say he's usually quiet, but once he gets angry, he becomes more ruthless than any other demon. So my existence really got in his way after all. She squeezed her eyes shut, already convinced this was the end for her. But instead, Demon simply held out a hand to her and asked gently, "Can you stand? Those guys are gone now, so you don't need to worry." There was no contempt in his eyes, only simple kindness. Seeing that, the succubus froze in confusion. "I'm a succubus. If you touch me, doesn't that disgust you?" Demon pulled her to her feet. "If we're going to think like that, then I'm a human. Does that make me disgusting to you?" The succubus hurriedly shook her head and said no, never. So Demon lightly patted her on the shoulder and told her not to worry about things like that. Her eyes trembled. "Yuri's so gentle. I've never been treated with this kind of kindness before, so it really makes me happy. I want to repay you. Do you have time right now?" The moment Demon heard the word repay, a very bad feeling rose in his chest. IT seriously felt like he had just stumbled into another huge problem. Hopefully that wasn't exactly what was happening. Meanwhile, the Demon King went to check on Demon, only to open the door and find the bed completely empty. What the hell? Where did he run off to in that short amount of time? Elsewhere, eager to show her gratitude, Scene was enthusiastically introducing Demon to the castle garden and even offering to give him some plants that were supposedly good for recovery. Hearing that, Demon looked doubtful. This creepy, gloomy Demon King's castle has a garden? The succubus girl then introduced herself properly. She explained that she was the gardener in charge of managing the plants around the Demon King's castle, and that her name was Scene. Beautiful flowers, lush greenery, and fresh air. Honestly, that sounded like exactly the kind of place Demon needed most right now if he wanted to calm his nerves. So he immediately said, "That actually sounds like a great place to relax. Could you take me there?" With Scene leading the way, Demon soon arrived at a garden so scenic it almost looked peaceful. Then, out of nowhere, one of the plants opened a giant fang mouth and lunged straight at him. Luckily, Demon reacted just fast enough to stumble backward and barely avoid getting bitten. Seeing that, Scene hurriedly stepped in front of him. "If you charge at him like that, you'll scare Lord Demon. Or do you want me to discipline you all over again?" Then she quickly turned back and explained, "I'm sorry, Lord Demon, IT was probably just too excited because you showed up." Demon nearly exploded inside. Like hell it was. There was no way that thing looked excited in any normal sense. He took a closer look around the garden and felt his scalp go numbed out on the surface. The place looked ordinary enough, but every plant in it was some kind of nightmare. He needed to get out of here fast. So Demon immediately came up with an excuse to leave. "I need to head to the training grounds now. I should go check in on the Zero Legion, that I've been away from them too long, that I really need to see them." And just like that, under Scene's visibly reluctant gaze, Demon made his escape from the garden as fast as he could. The whole way out, he couldn't stop roasting himself inside his own head that he really thought there might be normal people in this castle. What an idiot. His room was obviously the only safe place here. Everywhere else was a death trap. But then, all of a sudden, Demon stopped in his tracks. Thinking about it carefully, maybe he really did need to go see the members of the Zero Legion. Ever since that drunken disaster caused trouble for everyone, he had been too embarrassed to face them and kept making excuses to avoid it. But both the Demon King and Ed had been relentlessly pushing him to show up and raise morale. So in the end, Demon made his way to the nearby training grounds. Oh, his surprise, though, the place was completely empty. After that, he walked over to the side and picked up one of the wooden swords the soldiers used for training. Since he had blacked out so badly during the monster extermination that he remembered nothing, this might be the perfect chance to get a feel for how intense their training really was. But the second he picked it up, his face changed. The wooden sword was absurdly heavy, so heavy it slammed against the ground, and he could barely lift it at all. Right then, several members of the Zero Legion suddenly appeared nearby, staring at Demon in shock. Demon's heart instantly sank. Great, did they just see that whole pathetic scene? What he didn't know was that, in their eyes, everything he had just done looked overwhelmingly calm, powerful, and full of authority. A second later, they all rushed over toward him. "Lord Demon, what you did during the last mission was absolutely incredible." Listening to them babble excitedly, Demon was completely lost. Why was everyone looking at him with that kind of worship in their eyes? So all he could do was keep a straight face and say that he had originally planned to come see them right after the mission, but had been delayed by a few things. Then he turned as if to leave. "You've all worked hard. Good job on the mission." But at that exact moment, a man dressed in black quietly drew the sword at his waist from within the crowd. Because Demon was so tense, his foot suddenly twisted the instant he turned back around. Panic exploded in his head. Falling over right now would be humiliating beyond belief. And no matter what, he had to hold it together. Yet because of that exact misstep, he accidentally dodged the assassin's lethal strike from behind. The assassin stared in disbelief. This guy actually dodged a killing blow like that? Demon, meanwhile, finally realized someone had just tried to assassinate him. This was way too dangerous. He had to get out of here fast. He hurriedly pushed himself back up, but moved so abruptly that his elbow smashed straight into the attacker's face. And when the assassin lifted his head, Demon was shocked to discover that the man was human. The next second, the assassin sprang up and tried to flee. In that instant, Demon grit his teeth and forced all his strength into lifting the wooden sword in his hand. If he let this guy escape, then he'd be the one in danger next. A moment later, he brought the wooden sword crashing down and knocked the man unconscious on the spot. Looking at the unconscious assassin, Demon immediately gave the order, "Report this to the Demon King and lock this man up." Seeing that, the members of the Zero Legion were filled with guilt. Lord Demon must be disappointed in us. It was our negligence that let an intruder slip into the training grounds. And in the end, Lord Demon himself had to step in and capture him. Those movements just now, they were so fast they looked effortless. Lord Demon looked as relaxed as if you're taking a walk. Then in a split second, he dodged the attack with unbelievable speed and countered right away. He didn't even let the intruder escape. He resolved the whole situation in the blink of an eye. The commander's presence is overwhelming. Compared to him, it feels like the rest of us barely even exist. That's why, if I ever want to earn Lord Demon's acknowledgement, I need to train even harder. We can't waste time like this anymore. Everyone, training starts now. If we want to become strong enough to support Lord Demon one day, Then from today onward, there are no more breaks. Move out. At that moment, a sharp stab of pain ran through Demon's wrist. He had only barely managed to lift that wooden sword earlier, and now his wrist felt like it was about to fall apart. Still, the trouble had already been handed off to other people, so all Demon wanted now was to hurry back to his room and rest. Early the next morning, the Demon King was already sitting in front of him. "You look exhausted. You slept like you completely blacked out. Sorry that I know you just woke up, but can you spare me a little time?" A moment later, Demon followed the Demon King down into the underground prison. Judging from the atmosphere, yesterday's intruder had been locked up here, but why bring him all the way to a place like this? Had the intruder said something strange about him? Or was this supposed to be some kind of warning, showing him what happened to people who crossed the line? But the moment Demon got a good look at the man in the cell, he froze. The guy looked absolutely wrecked. What the hell had happened in just one night? Then the Demon King stepped closer to the prisoner and said, "Demon, take a good look at this man. Doesn't he seem familiar? He may be human, but he has enough strength to take down ordinary demons on his own. More importantly, when he stands before a Demon King like me, his power rises even further." Hearing that, Demon immediately thought of the figure spoken of in old rumors. It was said that when a hero stood against the Demon King and faced inevitable destruction, there were usually two choices. The first was self-detonation, using their own destruction to deal a massive blow to the nearby Demon King. The second was to scatter their power across the continent at the cost of their own life, creating what were known as hero fragments. Most heroes, terrified that their power would vanish completely, chose the second option. The Empire then gathered together the people who inherited those fragments in private. People called all of them heroes. But in public, the Empire only granted the title of hero to those who earned outstanding merit and military glory, assigning them ranks and honors. In the end, it was just a convenient system the Empire used to squeeze every last drop of use out of them. At that point, the Demon King flung the man aside and said coldly, "So the Empire sent a hero into the demon realm. Though to be precise, hero candidate would be a much better term. Exactly. If he were a formally recognized hero of the Empire, there was no way he'd be this weak. But the Empire also wouldn't send a hero candidate into the demon realm for no reason. What exactly was the Emperor trying to do?" Thinking that far, Demon turned to the Demon King with a serious look. "Please allow me to speak with him alone for a moment." Before leaving, the Demon King patted him on the shoulder. "Find out I'll wait for you outside." Once the Demon King was gone, the prisoner immediately glared at Demon with naked hatred. "D. Winhart, you traitor. You earned His Majesty's trust, became one of the Empire's heroes, and then betrayed the Empire to side with the demon realm." Hearing that, Demon let out a laugh. "So that's the story they fed you. Looks like you're nothing but a disposable pawn they threw away." The man roared back, "That's a lie. I was given an important mission directly by His Majesty, to eliminate a traitor." Demon stared at him and said slowly, "All I did was call you a disposable pawn, and you reacted that hard. Sounds like deep down, you already know what kind of mistake got you tossed aside like trash and sent here. Didn't you just say His Majesty knows everything? Then He should already know exactly why I'm in the demon realm, and what I'm trying to do here. And even so, He still sent you to this place where death is practically guaranteed, all under the excuse of hunting down a traitor. What? Are you really only realizing now that He abandoned you from the start?" Hearing that, the man's face finally stiffened. "I gave everything I had to the Empire." Demon simply turned and walked toward the cell door. "Think it over carefully before you throw your life away." As he stepped out of the prison, Demon couldn't help sneering to himself. That loyalty was way too fragile. Imagine wasting your whole life on something that was never worth clinging to in the first place. After they stepped out of the cell, the Demon King looked at Demon and asked, "What should we do with that man? If he's trained properly, he might still be useful somewhere." Demon fell silent for a moment before answering in a low voice. "The final decision is yours, of course. But if it were up to me, killing the man would be the cleaner option." "Find it, I'll take care of it myself," the Demon King said. Then he patted Demon on the shoulder again. "But in return, you have to do one thing for me. Commander 1 has sent an urgent request for reinforcements. And this time, it's not some mere hero candidate. A real hero has entered the battlefield. If the figure appearing on the front lines wasn't just another disposable fragment the Emperor could use and throw away, but an actual hero in the truest sense, then ordinary demons wouldn't stand a chance against him." The Demon King tightened his hand on Demon's shoulder as he spoke. "First the Emperor sends fragments to probe us, and now he's dispatching a true hero. What exactly is he after? So yes, I'm asking you to take this mission too." But right then, Demon suddenly snapped back to reality. "Wait, when had he even gotten here? And where exactly had the Demon King just told him to go? All he remembered was following the Demon King into the dungeon. Then before he knew it, he'd somehow been assigned to another place that sounded terrifying beyond belief. Lately, this kind of memory lapse had been happening to him again and again. Every time it hit, it felt like his mind was about to split apart. Was this actually some kind of illness? Demon could only vaguely remember that the intruder would probably be executed today for the Demon King ordering him to the front lines, where the news that a new hero had appeared his mind was almost completely blank. At that moment, Ed stepped forward and reminded him, "Everyone's already prepared, we can leave at any time." Then, all of a sudden, Commander 11, Lirinal, came flying down from above on her broom. "Lord Demon, I really missed you." Demon looked at her in confusion, unable to figure out why she had suddenly shown up here. She looked cute enough on the surface, but her magical power ranked second only to the Demon King's. At this point, there was no way Demon was getting fooled by appearances again. When Demon questioned her, Lirinal suddenly reached behind her back. Then she held out a necklace. "I heard you were heading to the front lines, so I wanted to give this to you." Demon stared at the necklace, growing more suspicious by the second. Why was she giving him something like this? The whole thing felt weird. Lirinal explained seriously, "This necklace has defensive magic on it, at the very least. It can block one attack that would otherwise kill you on the spot. It's not especially valuable, but I still hope it can help you, Lord Demon." The moment he heard that, Demon accepted it almost immediately. If she was offering it to him, of course he was taking it. There was no reason to reject a life-saving item that had landed in his lap. But before he even realized what he was doing, his other hand had already moved and was gently patting Lirinal on the head. Standing nearby, Ed said with complete seriousness, "No matter how strong Lord Demon is, the after effects still can't be ignored. I've been worried about that this whole time. Thanks to Lady Lirinal's necklace, I can finally feel a little more at ease." Lirinal immediately puffed up with pride. "So you really do care that much about Lord Demon? Looks like you're actually a decent vice commander after all. From now on, keep that same attitude and take good care of my Lord Demon." Ed replied loudly, "Yes, ma'am. Leave it to me." Watching the two of them start playing off each other like that, Demon climbed into the carriage with a deadpan expression. "Do whatever you want. You can stay there and keep playing with Lirinal." Once he was back inside the carriage, Demon started going over everything Ed had said, especially the part about the so-called after effects left behind after killing the hero. The problem was he had never killed the hero. He had never stopped a hero who was trying to self-destruct, and he had definitely never tanked the blast of that self-destruction with his own body. Back then, he had only been one of the hero's companions. The hero had personally told him to stay behind, saying that the cleanup on the battlefield would be handled by him and the Imperial Army. After all, that Demon King had been judged the strongest in history, and no one could guarantee they'd all return alive, so someone had to survive long enough to carry the outcome of that war back to the Empire. After waiting there for what felt like forever, Demon finally decided he had to see the result of the battle with his own eyes before returning. If the Empire had won, he would bring the hero back. If they had lost, then at the very least he could still carry the outcome home. Just watching from a distance shouldn't be a problem, right? But when he got close enough to see the battlefield, he found the hero already on one knee before a crowd of demons. In the very next instant, a blinding light erupted from the hero's body. Demon's heart jolted. Self-destruction. So this was really how it ended after all? He had to report the situation back to the Empire immediately. But at that exact moment, a demon behind him suddenly blocked his path. Without saying a word, it swung its weapon straight at him. Demon barely dodged the lethal blow, but he already knew the truth. If things kept going like this, there was no way he was escaping alive. Desperate, he drove his dagger toward the creature's chest, but with his strength alone, piercing skin that thick was nearly impossible. Then suddenly, the ground beneath them cracked apart. Demon and the demonic beast both plunged straight off the cliff together. The only reason he survived was because he landed on top of the beast instead of the rocks below. But if he had really fallen down from the cliff, didn't that mean he had landed right in the center of enemy territory? The surrounding demons immediately erupted into chatter, all of them asking who this human was and how he had managed to kill the 7th commander. At the same time, the Demon King himself fixed his gaze on Demon. The look in his eyes was cold enough to make it seem like he could kill him on the spot. Then the hero struggled to his feet and looked at Demon. "Why are you here? Why did you come when you knew I was about to self-destruct?" And then, against all reason, he forcibly halted his own self-destruction and continued. "You really are impossible. I kept hoping that at the very least, you would survive. You're nothing like the person the world thinks you are, that you're kind to the point of recklessness, and loyal enough to make people worry. If there's ever another hero after me, I wish it could be you. World, are you watching? This is my final request. Save this man. In the next instant, the hero's body erupted again with dazzling golden light. Please, even if it's only one fragment, let it descend to him. Even the Demon King looked stunned. The hero is trying to transfer his power. That's impossible. When the light faded, the hero collapsed into Demon's arms. Deep down, Demon knew the hero should have known too. There was no way to artificially pass on a hero's power. And yet, instead of self-destructing, he had still tried to force that power onto Demon. For one brief instant, Demon had felt a tiny flicker of hope too. But in the end, his body showed no change at all. A violent fit of coughing soon racked his body. He was still the same fragile, powerless man as before. But the demons around him had already misunderstood everything. That human just killed the hero. He must have struck the hero down before the self-destruction could go off and stop the blast. That's insane. Still, he looks like he's barely holding on. Well, obviously, he took the hero's power head-on with his own body. There's no way he could come out of that unharmed. Demon looked down at the blood he had coughed into his hand, and one thought alone crossed his mind. Was this because of the impact from falling off the cliff? Either way, he was already surrounded by demons on all sides. Escape was impossible now. Maybe none of those details even mattered anymore. But after struggling this hard just to stay alive, was this really where it all ended for him? And then, at last, the Demon King stepped toward him and asked in a low voice, "What is your name?" Demon had no idea why the Demon King was suddenly asking that, but he understood one thing clearly. This was not the moment to defy him. He gave the name D-Win Heart, figuring it was better to lower the Demon King's guard first and look for a chance to escape later. But the very next words out of the Demon King's mouth left him stunned. "Good, I like you. How would you feel about joining the Demon King's army? And let me make one thing clear. You don't need to worry about humans or demons objecting. Anyone who witnessed what happened here just now wouldn't dare speak against it, not even in their dreams. Demon did want to survive. He just never imagined survival would come in a form like this. And from that day onward, everyone led by the Demon King completely misunderstood him as some absurdly overwhelming monster. Before long, they arrived at the border where the demon realm met the human world, the front line where conflict with the Empire had never truly stopped. The moment he got there, Commander 1, Jekker, reached out to him in a battered state. "I've been waiting for you." Inside, Demon could only curse his luck. He really should have refused the Demon King's offer back then, no matter what. But at the time, he had been terrified that a refusal would get him killed on the spot, so all he could do was swallow it and go along with it. Then again, looking back now, he had never really had a choice to begin with. Seeing the strained smile on Demon's face, Jekker interpreted it completely differently. "Now that you're outside the Demon King's castle, your expressions look much more alive. You must be truly looking forward to this war." Then he added, "That said, even if you're eager, things are only temporarily quiet right now. The war could break out at any moment." Demon stared at him in confusion. "Who's looking forward to anything? Are you talking about the soldiers?" But Jekker answered as if it were obvious. "I mean that when the war against the Imperial Army begins, I hope you'll join the battle personally." Meanwhile, in the Imperial military camp, scouts had already reported that Commander Zero had entered the battlefield. Since yesterday, that news alone had noticeably boosted morale on the Demon King's side. An Imperial officer gritted his teeth. "What a nightmare. Why does that famous monster have to show up here of all places? They say he's the Demon King's greatest trump card, and among all 12 commanders, he's even stronger than Commander 1, the best of the lot." Thinking that through, the officer made a decisive order. Send an assassin to eliminate Commander Zero. But another commander nearby immediately objected, arguing that assassinating Commander Zero was almost certainly impossible. The first officer countered, "If Commander Zero truly exists as the rumors describe, then yes, that would be true. But no one has ever actually confirmed whether those stories are real. For all we know, Commander Zero might be nothing more than a fabrication the Demon King's army created to raise morale. If a single assassin can verify whether he's real or not, that alone would be a major gain. For now, gathering intel on Commander Zero takes priority." At the same time, Ed was wrapping bandages around Demon from head to toe. Those bandages had all been personally created through the Demon King's magic. They could block light, maintain a stable temperature, and unless they were torn too badly, they would even repair themselves automatically. According to Ed, transparent magic had also been cast over the areas covering his eyes, nose, and mouth, while the robe itself had been enchanted to improve his vision. But magic was a force that ran against the rules of the world, which meant demonic mana was limited to begin with. Once that mana was spent through spell casting, it could never be recovered. And the more mana the Demon King consumed, the sooner the world would give birth to a new hero to balance him. Watching the Demon King recklessly burn through mana just to make some bandages, Demon could only marvel in silent shock. The Demon King must have absolute confidence in his own strength, fully believing that even if a new hero appeared early, he could crush them anyway. After that, Demon suggested inspecting the camp and, while he was at it, confirming the corpse of Commander 9. Of course, that was only an excuse. His real goal was to stall for time while quietly looking for somewhere he could hide. But the second he stepped outside, he saw a crowd of demons already gathered there. It really is Lord Commander Zero. We were on edge this whole time, but now we can finally relax. If Commander Zero is here, we're definitely winning next time. Seeing that scene, even Jekker let out a faint smile. The Demon King had been right. Commander Zero's mere presence was enough to massively raise morale. Hidden in a tree off to the side, a man in black watched the scene in silence. Oh, that was the legendary Commander Zero. He actually existed. Compared to what the assassin had imagined, the figure looked smaller and more fragile than expected. And yet, that calm composure and the crushing pressure that still leaked through even beneath the heavy robe made one thing unmistakably clear. This was absolutely someone with terrifying power. A moment later, the man hidden in the shadows pulled out a silver needle. Since he had already come this far, he figured he might as well test Commander Zero's strength for himself. The needle had been coated in a deadly toxin, and in the next instant, it shot straight toward Demon's head. But at that exact moment, Demon suddenly lowered his head and narrowly avoided the fatal strike. Of course, Demon had no clue what had just happened. He had only dipped his head because he almost tripped over a rock on the ground and was inwardly grumbling that nobody around here ever bothered cleaning the roads. Since there didn't seem to be anywhere worth hiding anyway, Demon gave up on wandering around. Better to head back to camp and sit down quietly than trip again outside. Watching from concealment, the assassin froze. What was that? He just went back. Did that mean he still hadn't been discovered? But then the assassin immediately came up with an even more terrifying explanation. No Commander Zero must have noticed him already. He just didn't want to alarm his troops by saying it out loud. He was probably planning to inform only his most trusted subordinate and then eliminate the intruder in secret. After returning to his room, Demon asked Ed, "How much do you know about that new hero on the human side?" Ed answered, "I heard Commander 2 is still investigating, but the man never removes his helmet, so no one has seen his face yet." Listening from his hiding spot on the ceiling, the man broke out in a cold sweat. Had Commander Zero already seen through everything and realized that the one who sent him was Lord Cruel? This guy was terrifying. After the casual talk, Ed poured Demon a glass of red wine brought from the Demon King's castle and said that, on the battlefield, a little alcohol could help calm the nerves. But just then, Demon heard a faint sound nearby and turned his attention toward it, completely unaware that poison had already been slipped into the wine. The assassin above nearly laughed to himself. Idiot, he actually fell for the noise made by a tossed pebble. Thanks to that distraction, the assassin had managed to lace the wine with a super toxin that would kill with a single sip. A moment later, Demon raised the cup toward his lips, still wondering if maybe he had only imagined the sound. Seeing that, the assassin's face twisted with savage delight. Perfect, Commander Zero was finally finished. And yet, just as the cup reached Demon's mouth, his hand suddenly stopped. Then, in the next instant, he flung the glass straight to the floor. Why are there so many bugs gathering here? In truth, Demon had only meant to wave away the insects buzzing around him. But instead, the cup slipped out of his hand and went flying. Demon instantly turned to Ed with a panicked look that practically screamed, "I didn't do that on purpose." But the spilled wine on the floor immediately began giving off thick white smoke. Ed's expression changed at once, and he snapped his head toward the ceiling. The wine was poisoned, there's an intruder. By then, the man hiding above was already fleeing with everything he had, and he needed to report this to Lord Cruel immediately. Commander Zero's power hadn't been exaggerated at all. The rumors were true. That man really was terrifyingly dangerous. When Commander 1 learned that Demon had been targeted for assassination, he flew into a rage and barked orders at once. "I'll deal with your negligence over this infiltration later. Right now, search the camp inside and out. Find out whether there are any other enemies still hiding here." Meanwhile, back at the Imperial camp, Cruel listened to the assassin's report with a grim expression. From what I can tell, not a single rumor about Commander Zero was exaggerated at this rate. Yehua Empire has no chance of winning. The assassin himself was no weakling, and yet he had returned with fear written all over his face. That alone said enough. Now that Commander Zero's existence was fully out in the open, there was only one way to beat the Demon King's army while he was still on their side. They needed to bring out that person. Someone beside him immediately asked, "You mean another hero from the Empire?" Cruel answered in a low voice, "Exactly. But for now, there are no other heroes available to you SO at this point. The only correct move is to retreat. But the soldier beside him couldn't help pointing out, if we retreat now, won't everyone think the Empire is running because it fears Commander Zero? But right then, another soldier came rushing in. Commander, the Demon King's army has launched an attack, and the one leading them is said to be Commander Zero. The moment they heard that, everyone in the tent shot to their feet. Cruel's face darkened as he muttered, "Damn it. Not a single thing is going according to plan." Meanwhile, out on the battlefield, Demon, after emptying an entire bottle of red wine, was cutting down the Imperial soldiers in front of him with terrifying ease. Even Ed was stunned by the sight. Lord Demon was clearly drunk, and yet even like this, there was still nothing on the battlefield more reliable than him. And it was precisely because Demon was standing at the front that the Demon King's army was able to hold such a firm advantage. One Imperial soldier lying on the ground, trembling uncontrollably, looked up at Demon's merciless slaughter and felt a chill run through his entire body. If a man like that couldn't be called a demon, then who in the world could? When that soldier still tried to reach for a weapon at his side, Demon coldly told him, "If you don't want to die, then keep fighting." Even so, the soldier clenched his teeth and raised his sword in front of his chest. In response, Demon strode forward and ripped the blade right out of the man's hands. Just as Demon was about to finish him off, a massive surge of force exploded from the side and blasted him across the battlefield in an instant. Seeing that, Ed immediately rushed toward him in panic. "Lord Demon, are you all right?" Then he turned sharply toward the one who had attacked. The man was clad in silver-white armor, radiating a sharp and oppressive presence. The newcomer spoke in a calm voice. "I intended to kill you with a single strike. I didn't expect you to block it." Demon lowered his gaze and pulled out the defensive necklace Lirinal had given him. If not for that item taking the hit for him, he would have died on the spot. The soldier who had been lying on the ground burst into tears of relief the moment he saw the Empire's hero appear. The Empire's new hero, the rising star of the battlefield, Cruel. Now we can finally live. He never got to finish. Demon rose and cut him in half in a single strike. Then Demon lifted his eyes toward the man, known as the new hero, and spoke with faint confusion in his voice. "So you're the new hero. I've heard plenty about you. But something feels strange. Why does your voice sound so familiar? Have we met somewhere before? Forget it. Why don't you just take off your helmet?" The moment the man refused, Demon blurred forward and appeared in front of him almost instantly. Even so, the blow was still blocked head-on. After several rapid exchanges, Demon drove a kick into the hero and forced him back, finally opening up some distance between them. Then, to everyone's surprise, Demon spread his hands and said calmly, "It's a shame, but let's end it here for today." Cruel immediately snapped back. "Who gave you the right to decide that on your own? The war isn't over. Your side was the one that crossed the line and invaded first." But Demon answered evenly, "No, it's already over. Didn't your side already kill Commander 9? And judging by what I'm seeing, you weren't satisfied with merely taking back Imperial land, were you? You've already begun invading the demon realm itself. We're simply reclaiming land that was taken from you. Oh, stop wasting lives pointlessly. How about both sides settle for protecting their own territory?" Cruel instinctively looked back and saw the wounded soldiers scattered behind him. Only then did he realize just how badly anger had clouded his judgment. So Cruel slowly lowered his sword. Even though the battlefield had tilted in their favor, the Empire's losses were already too severe to ignore at this point. Sticking to the original plan and retreating was the smartest move left. Seeing him back off, Demon turned his head and coldly threw out, "If there's nothing else, then let's make sure we never meet again. Your voice is bad luck all by itself." Watching that exchange, Jekker, the first commander, couldn't help feeling it was a little wasteful. The enemy hero had clearly been pushed right to the edge. With the Empire's morale already collapsing, now should have been the perfect chance to press the attack. But if even Demon had chosen to stop, then there had to be a reason for it. So Jekker simply placed a hand on Demon's shoulder and said quietly, "You've done enough." Then, in the very next second, Demon's body finally gave out, and he collapsed straight into Jekker's arms. Jekker instinctively reached out to steady him, only for his expression to change immediately. Demon's body was burning hot, almost like he was on fire. Even in that condition, he had still fought like that. In that moment, Jekker finally understood why Demon had stopped midway through the battle. It wasn't because he couldn't keep going to it, was because he had already seen what would happen next, and forcibly suppress his own urge to keep fighting. That he hadn't wanted anyone to notice how bad his body had become, because if he collapsed, it wouldn't just affect him, it would shake the morale of the entire Demon King's army. Just then, Ed and the physician rushed over and quickly helped lift Demon up. After examining him, the conclusion was clear. His already fragile body had been pushed far past its limit and had fallen into total exhaustion. Jekker looked down at the unconscious Demon, his eyes filled with admiration. He really is extraordinary. This Commander Zero, who had appeared as if from nowhere and taken his place among them, whether it was killing the former commander or stopping the hero's self-destruction. Even setting all of those rumors aside, the fact that he had been personally brought back by the Demon King alone was enough to force others to acknowledge his standing. And yet, even so, somewhere deep inside, Jekker had always carried a trace of unease. But after today, Demon had proven beyond doubt that he was fully worthy of the title of Commander Zero of the Demon Realm. Meanwhile, back in the castle, Lirinal suddenly felt the necklace she had given Demon shatter. Her heart clenched instantly. If the necklace had broken, then Demon must have been in terrible danger. Even though the Demon King had ordered her to remain behind and guard the barrier, she made up her mind on the spot. No matter what, she had to go to the front lines herself. Just hold on, Lord Demon Lirinal is coming. In his hazy unconsciousness, Demon thought he heard the Demon King smile and say, "You've worked hard. Just as I expected, you never disappoint me, so what did you think after meeting that new hero?" But in the dream, Demon raised his head and answered seriously, "There are some things about heroes that I want to discuss with you." The Demon King paused slightly at the look in his eyes. From the atmosphere alone, it was obvious Demon still hadn't fully come down from the aftershock of that battle. So instead, the Demon King led him into his room and placed a stack of documents in his hands. "Read this first, there's some very interesting information in there." But just as the dreaming Demon lowered his gaze to look through them, Lirinal's frantic voice suddenly rang out in reality. "Lord Demon." In the next instant, Demon jolted awake, utterly confused. What was going on? Where was this? Back in the Demon King's castle. When had he returned? Just a moment ago, he had been on the front lines. Looking down, he saw Lirinal clinging tightly to him, her shoulders shaking as she cried, "Thank goodness, Lord Demon, you really made it back safely." Demon's whole mind blanked out that, in a way, he had only drunk a little. Had he blacked out again? Had his alcohol tolerance really gotten that terrible? Then Lirinal continued through her tears. "The necklace I gave you shattered, and I panicked. I rushed all the way to the front lines. But by the time I got there, they told me Lord Demon had already been taken back to the castle. Still, I'm glad. The moment I returned, I got to see you right away." After hearing all that, Demon was left with only one miserable conclusion. Apparently, he had gotten drunk, gone wild again, and forgotten the whole thing. Demon slowly opened the file the Demon King had handed him. The name written inside made his pupils tighten instantly. Cruel Heart. It was a name he knew he would never forget for as long as he lived. That man, his older brother, the one he had once loved deeply and never truly managed to let go of, had become a hero. Since when had everything started turning into this? Demon gently patted Lirinal on the head and said quietly, "Sorry, I still have things I need to deal with, so I have to go." Watching him walk away, Lirinal stood there in a daze. Why did Lord Demon suddenly seem angry? Commander Zero really was as hard to read as ever. One of the nearby demons quickly asked, "Lady Lirinal, are you all right?" But her answer left everyone around her speechless. Lord Demon, when he's angry, is still so handsome. Meanwhile, once Demon focused on the parchment in his hands, the memories that had been blurred and scattered finally started to return piece by piece. He remembered it now. Back then, the Demon King had called him in for a private talk and told him directly that it was about time for him to return to the Empire. At the time, Demon had also taken the opportunity to say that he wanted to investigate the new hero while he was there. The Demon King told him he should leave immediately. If Demon stayed away from the Demon King's castle for too long, the Empire would eventually start getting suspicious. Then the Demon King placed a hand directly against Demon's chest. In the next instant, a purple light flared there. The Demon King explained that it was a tracking spell, an insurance measure. After all, Demon was a uniquely dangerous existence, a commander of the Demon King's army who also carried the identity of an imperial hero. So if he found anything useful while in the Empire, he was expected to return and report it personally. Demon clearly remembered hearing those words, but that only made things worse. Since when had he become a spy working for the Demon King? And the mark on his chest made one thing undeniable. It hadn't been a dream. But what troubled him even more was the fact that every time he came under too much pressure, his memory seemed to snap. How was he supposed to stop something like that? Just as Demon was sinking into thought, Ed walked in with an odd look on his face. Apparently, the Demon King had just told Ed that he wanted him to inherit the position of Commander 9. Ed had spent so long at Demon's side as his adjutant that, before he knew it, he had almost forgotten. That position had once been the place he himself had always been waiting for. Seeing how hesitant he was, the Demon King had only smiled faintly. If you turn it down, that seat will fall to some junior, even weaker than you. Are you really fine with letting someone like that become your superior? In the end, Ed had quietly asked for a little more time to think it over. Now, seeing the strange look on Ed's face, Demon couldn't help asking, "What exactly did the Demon King say to you?" But Ed only shook his head and forced out a small smile. Nothing important. Later, after learning that the carriage was ready, Demon turned toward him and said quietly, "Take care of yourself until I get back." But the moment those words left his mouth, another absurd thought suddenly crossed Demon's mind. What if Ed had gone to the Demon King to complain that serving him was exhausting and that he wanted to quit being his adjutant altogether? Thinking that, Demon suddenly stopped and looked back at him. "Is there anything you want? I'm making a rare trip back to the Empire, so maybe I can bring something back, like something you can only get there. I remember you liked the Imperial snacks last time. Anyway, I'm planning to buy a bunch of things while I'm there. So, if there's something you want, just tell me." Hearing that, Ed smiled and shook his head, saying there wasn't anything in particular he wanted. But inside, Demon's words warmed him deeply. In the entire demon realm, what other superior would care for a subordinate like this? Even so, Ed spoke seriously in return. "More importantly, you have to keep the necklace Lady Lyrinal gave you with you at all times. And don't neglect the robe you'll be wearing in the human world either." Then, lifting his head, Ed looked at Demon and said softly, "I'll be waiting for you to come back, Lord Demon." Hearing that, something seemed to click inside Ed. The gloom on his face lifted almost instantly. Being Lord Demon's adjutant already made him happier than anything. And more than that, he truly wanted to be someone who could help Demon. So no matter where Lord Demon went, Ed would always remain his adjutant and wait for the day he returned. After a long and difficult journey, Demon finally made it back to the place where he had once lived, Hart County. But the moment he reached the gates, the guards stopped him. "The Count is not currently in residence, and no outsiders are allowed to enter." So Demon took off his cloak and mask and said flatly, "Am I not even allowed to return to my own estate?" The moment he stepped inside, he was met by rows of servants lined up on both sides, all bowing in perfect unison. Demon frowned immediately. "I told you before, there's no need to greet me like this every single time." But it wasn't until he saw the old butler, Lambert, that he finally felt like he had truly come home. Maybe it was because the two of them had been together ever since Demon first received the estate. Lambert bowed and asked respectfully, "It has been a long time, my lord. Did the monster subjugation end without trouble?" That was when Demon suddenly remembered what excuse he had given the outside world. He had publicly claimed he'd gone out under Imperial orders to suppress monsters. He simply nodded. "It's over." The next moment, the old butler gently touched his face, his voice full of concern. "You're hurt. If only these old bones of mine were still good enough to go deal with those monsters for you." Demon immediately looked embarrassed and turned his face away, lightly moving the old man's hand aside. "I'm fine that I'm not a child anymore." Lambert only smiled warmly. "Yes, that you become a truly fine count." Demon's gaze then drifted to the large portrait in the hall, still hidden beneath a great red cloth, and he understood one thing clearly. News of his return to the Empire had probably already reached the Emperor's ears. And beyond that, there was still something he absolutely had to confirm for himself. Everything related to Cruel. At the same time, when Duke Illist learned that Demon had returned to the Empire, he smiled and turned to Cruel. "I hear your younger brother has come back. So then, how shall we handle this?" Cruel looked at the Duke with a grave expression and said, "I'll commission the Assassin's Guild." But the Duke only gave him a knowing smile. Cruel, and what if that choice leaves evidence behind? Don't you still have another, much better card to play? Isn't that right, Saren? Saren immediately answered, "You mean the rebels? Your Grace? If it's those maniacs who are obsessed with killing the Emperor, then even if their trail is exposed, it shouldn't lead back to us." Hearing that, the Duke's smile turned faintly amused. "I'm honestly surprised you didn't think of something so obvious before now." Cruel lowered his head slightly. "My apologies, I'll make contact with the rebels immediately." Elsewhere, Demon had already boarded a carriage headed for the Imperial capital, and he made it clear that he didn't want a large escort. Just a few attendants would be enough. After all, only a small number of people even knew he had returned to the Empire. Drawing too much attention right now would only cause trouble. But Demon also knew the truth all too well. In the demon realm, he had to watch every step around the Demon King. Back in the Empire, he would once again have to bow his head before the Emperor. And worst of all, the Emperor was every bit as terrifying as the Demon King, if not more. The current emperor, Eduardo, was the infamous Bloody Emperor, the man who had carved his way to the throne by force of the sword. Back when he was still the ninth prince, he personally wiped out all of his brothers and sisters. The image of him standing there drenched in blood and placing the crown on his own head became legendary. And even now, 10 years later, it remains something every person in the empire knew. Then, after taking the throne, he immediately declared that the Old Kingdom would henceforth be renamed an empire. The sheer arrogance of using the word empire as the nation's official name was such a blatant provocation that the surrounding kingdoms could hardly ignore it. And that was how the 8-Year War began, the war that would completely change Demon's life. Looking back on it now, Demon could only think of that time as hell. IT had been so horrific that half his memories of it were already lost in a haze. But even so, he had no desire whatsoever to recover them. IT was in that war. After all, that he earned military merit and was granted the title of honorary count. He might not remember much anymore, but one thing was certain. Back then, he must have fought like a madman just to survive. Most of the rest could fade, but there was one thing he still remembered clearly, the life goal he had set for himself during that time. And that very goal was what allowed both the demon realm and the empire to keep dragging him by the nose all the way to where he stood now. Just as Demon was lost in thought, the carriage suddenly lurched violently. He immediately threw open the curtain and stepped outside, only to find his guards already locked in a brutal fight with enemies closing in from every direction. Then his eyes caught the white bird tied around their sleeves, and his expression changed instantly. Rebels. But how had they known he would pass through here? The rebel army was a force that had gradually come together during the Emperor's devastating 8-Year War. They were the survivors who had lost both their nations and their families while the Empire swallowed neighboring kingdoms one after another. Their hatred for the Empire, for the Emperor himself, had burned away nearly everything human left inside them. Then, all of a sudden, a man flashed straight to Demon's side. In the next instant, the man seized him by the throat and slammed him hard against the side of the carriage. "Finally found you, you Emperor's dog. I heard you were some kind of hero. So, I was a little tense, but you're just some weak little bastard." In the instant the man's guard dropped from sheer contempt, Demon snapped out his dagger and struck back, but the attack was blocked by the man's axe. A second later, the man lifted Demon by the throat and smashed him straight into the ground. The impact was so vicious that blood burst from Demon's mouth at once, and the crushing pressure around his neck made it nearly impossible to breathe. "This is a hero. Don't tell me every rumor in the world is a lie." And the man raised his axe again. If you want to blame someone, blame the Emperor. But at that exact moment, when death was right in front of him, a spear came tearing through the air and knocked the weapon right out of the man's hand. His grip went numb from the impact, and he immediately whipped around toward the distance. What the hell is this now? Standing there were 3 men with savage looks on their faces. Wait, that scar carved across the Imperial crest they're wearing don't tell me that's. The Harmhal Knights, that demonic unit born during the 8-Year War, the one personally led by D. Win Hart. The rebels shouted in panic. How did they know about this place? How did they find us? Stop them. The knights only sneered. Looks like we can't half-ass this anymore. Should we make this our first real celebration in a while? What made those men terrifying wasn't just their strength, that IT was their sheer cruelty, the kind that felt stripped of all reason, just as vicious as the master they served. Then the leader gave a cold order. Kill every rebel in front of you. And listen carefully, don't let them die too easily. One of the others grinned with almost manic delight. Say, lest I've been itching to have some fun. The rebels instantly realized how bad the situation was, that if they fought those monsters head-on, they would be the ones paying the price. They had to complete the mission and retreat immediately. But at that exact moment, the man still clutching Demon's throat suddenly cried out in pain that Demon's nails had raked deep across his arm, leaving several ugly gashes. Startled and furious, the man hurled Demon away. "You damn lunatic!" He looked down at his own arm, now shredded and dripping with blood, and his face tightened in horror. Meanwhile, Demon slowly raised his head, and the pressure around him had changed completely. "Sorry, I was aiming to rip your arm apart. Looks like I was just a little short on strength." Then he bent down, picked up the fallen axe, and spoke in a voice cold enough to freeze the air. "My apologies, I'll finish this quickly." When it was over, Demon casually threw the axe aside and stepped forward, looking at the man now sprawled on the ground. "So he's already dead, is that enough?" "No, not yet. The only way to stop the rest from trying anything is to make an example out of someone." Demon grabbed the dagger at his side and, like a man gone mad, kept stabbing the corpse over and over again. The men nearby couldn't help muttering under their breath. "That's our captain for you. He really doesn't know how to hold back." Honestly, even if we hadn't stepped in, he probably would have handled it just fine on his own. And so, by the time Demon finally reached the imperial capital, he stepped down from the carriage drenched in blood from head to toe. The guard at the palace gates instinctively moved to block him. This is the imperial palace, and O1 enters without an invitation. But the moment they recognized him as Dwyn Hart, their tone changed at once, and they hurriedly stepped aside. Of course, my lord, you may seek an audience at any time, though, in your current condition. From them, Demon learned that the emperor was currently in the banquet hall, hosting a celebration for the birth of a new hero and the success of his first battle, which meant his older brother was almost certainly inside as well. Meanwhile, inside the hall, the emperor was looking at Cruel Heart with clear approval. I heard you reclaimed the territory that had been taken by the demons. Well done. Tonight's banquet was prepared to celebrate the rise of the new hero, Cruel Heart, and the success of his first campaign. Everyone, enjoy yourselves. But at that exact moment, Demon, covered in blood from head to toe, walked straight into the banquet hall, and the entire room erupted in shocked whispers. I don't know who that is, but that's unbelievably rude. Wait, I can't see clearly, but that white hair and red eyes is that Count Dwyn Hart. Then Demon brushed right past his older brother and headed straight toward the emperor. Your subject, Dwyn Hart, greets the reigning emperor. The nobles immediately began whispering among themselves. Look at all that blood, they call him the vampire count, and I'm starting to wonder if the Hart family really did pick up a vampire and raise him. I've heard even his own family never treated him well. Could it be the Harts themselves never wanted him? The emperor looked down at Demon and smiled faintly. So you really did make it back alive? Your life clings on stubbornly, doesn't it? It has been a while. Count Dwyn Hart, I did tell you that you were free to seek an audience with me at any time. Still, storming in here covered in blood and ruining the mood of the entire banquet. Don't you think that's rather rude? Then the emperor slowly set down his wine glass. It looks like you have quite a lot you want to say to me. Conveniently enough, I have a few things I want to ask you as well. Let's speak elsewhere. Once the two of them were alone, and after learning that Demon had been ambushed on the way, the emperor frowned and asked, "Was it the rebels? How is your condition? Do you need a doctor?" And after hearing that Demon was not in immediate danger, the emperor finally seemed to relax, only to murmur coldly, "A bunch of utter fools. Where else am I supposed to find another talent capable of producing results on the scale of Dwyn Hart? Back in the 8-Year War, you served as a vanguard general and delivered achievements that bordered on the unbelievable. Then, when you later marched as one of the hero's companions, you accomplished something no one had ever managed before. You brought the hero's body back intact. After all, whenever a hero falls to a demon king, the body is usually discarded as feed for monsters. If you hadn't forced your way through and brought that hero back, he would have ended the same way." Then, just like that, the emperor's tone shifted. He fixed his gaze on Demon and asked, "So then have you found a way to break the curse?" Hearing that, Demon's heart tightened. The first thing that came to mind was, of course, the mark the Demon King had left on him. But outwardly, he could only force a faint smile. Not yet. What the emperor didn't know was that it wasn't a curse at all. It was tracking magic branded onto him by the Demon King. But in the emperor's eyes, Demon's weakening body could only be explained as the result of a curse placed on him by the Demon King. After hearing Demon's answer, the emperor frowned slightly. "You still act like you don't care about your own body at all. The only one capable of breaking that curse is the Demon King. That's why I sent you to the demon realm in the first place. It seems you'll have to return there again after all. Sending someone as valuable as you back to that place doesn't sit well with me either." Hearing that, Demon could only sneer inwardly. The emperor made it sound noble. But in the end, he had simply thrown him into the Demon King's castle and turned him into an informant. Then the emperor asked, "Has there been any unusual movement in the Demon King's castle lately?" Demon answered calmly, "Nothing different from usual." But after saying that, Demon lifted his eyes and asked carefully, "There is one thing, though, your majesty. Did you send an assassin to the Demon King's castle? Since that man was a hero candidate who possessed a fragment, why did you send him into the demon realm to die, like a disposable pawn?" The emperor's expression turned cold immediately. "He's a bastard who stained the name of hero that I assumed he'd die before ever reaching the demon realm. Apparently the hero fragment inside him was enough to drag him there alive. Still, thanks to that piece of trash, your standing in the demon realm seems to have grown even more secure, hasn't it, Commander Vo, Demon Eret?" Hearing that, Demon's heart jolted. He hadn't expected the emperor to know even that identity. So he rose to his feet at once and bowed deeply. "Your subject is ashamed I am in that situation. I truly had no idea how I could have refused." But the emperor only smiled. "Relax, I didn't bring this up to blame you, that if anything, it helps you blend into them more perfectly and steal useful information from within." The fact that you were acknowledged, even in the demon realm, only proves what an exceptional talent you are. Then he looked at Demon and added meaningfully, "But I imagine you have another question you truly want answered." Demon was silent for a moment before raising his head and speaking with unusual seriousness. "Cruel Heart, why was he the one allowed to ascend as a hero? Your Majesty already knows this well. The one thing I regret most in my entire life is that I failed to kill Cruel Heart back then. He was the only surviving member of the Heart family besides me. No, more accurately, he was the only one from the Heart family who survived after falling into my hands. Di-Win, father and mother must be waiting. Why are you just standing there, spacing out?" The memory surfaced without warning. The young Di-Win reached out and grabbed his older brother's hand in a panic. "It's my fault. What if brother gets scolded too, because we're late?" But his brother gently pulled his hand free. "I just finished training. That MY hands are dirty. Sorry. But I don't care whether your hands are dirty or not." Then his brother turned to him and asked, "Why do you keep staring at that portrait?" Di-Win had smiled brightly and answered in a soft voice, "Because when I look at it, it feels like they're telling us we're a family. That's why I like it." But his brother only replied flatly, "It's just a painting. Don't wander around. Stay in your room." From the day he was born, people around Di-Win whispered behind his back. They said his white hair and red eyes were frightening, that he looked like some kind of monster, and that he could not possibly be a true child of the Heart bloodline. Maybe that was why. Every time he looked at that family portrait, he desperately searched for even the smallest sense that he belonged there too. Sometimes he even found himself wishing he had simply been born with the Heart family's black hair and green eyes. In reality, though, his father always gave him the same harsh command: stay in your room every day and never show that shameful appearance to anyone outside. That was how Di-Win learned, from a very young age, that his parents had never truly been satisfied with him. After all, he was different from everyone else. His appearance was strange, and his body was weak. Someone like him could never bring honor or dignity to a noble count's house. His brother, on the other hand, was the complete opposite. He had a strong body and swordsmanship far beyond what others his age could manage. Whenever his brother was present, everyone's attention naturally gathered around him alone. Because Di-Win had been born with flaws, even when he stood among other people, he always felt like he existed outside their world, stranded in a loneliness no one else could see. Still, he clung to one belief: if he worked hard enough, then one day he might become as outstanding as his brother. And if that happened, surely his family would love him a little more. But later, when children his own age surrounded him and mocked him as a monster, as a failure, his older brother rushed over without hesitation and pulled him away from them. After that, the doctor stood before his parents and said, "The second young master's body is extremely weak. His tolerance for strain is almost non-existent, and he must be kept away from sunlight as much as possible. Great care will be necessary for the rest of his life." Seeing the heavy, troubled looks on his parents' faces, the young Di-Win broke down in tears and apologized over and over. "I'm sorry, I'll try harder. Please don't hate me." It was then that his brother reached out, took his hand, and comforted him gently. "It's all right, little brother." For a moment, Di-Win actually believed it. See, his family really did love him after all. But then his brother said something that froze him where he stood. "You don't need to do anything, and no one has ever expected anything from you anyway." From that day on, Di-Win almost never left his room of his own accord. Every day, he locked himself inside, reading and practicing swordsmanship with desperate determination. He kept believing that if he worked hard enough, his family would eventually acknowledge him. But because his body was so weak, he would often start bleeding or coughing up blood midway through practice. And every time that happened, his brother would scold him with a dark expression. "Didn't I tell you not to practice? Just stay quietly in your room. You don't need to do anything." Did that mean he didn't even have the right to try? Because he was a failure? Did that mean no one believed he was worth expecting anything from in the first place? And so, from the day he finally gave up struggling until his teenage years, the only one who came to see him even occasionally was his brother, who would sometimes sit down and play chess with him. Other than that, he barely saw his parents at all. But that dead, stagnant life was eventually shattered by the sudden arrival of a soldier. Standing at the door, the man announced in a flat voice that he had come to deliver an imperial summons and demanded to know which one of them was Di-Win Heart. In the moment Di-Win timidly answered, the soldier grabbed him and dragged him outside without the slightest hesitation. That was when his brother suddenly stepped in and blocked their path. "Wait a moment. Di-Win can't be the one you're drafting. There has to be some mistake." But the soldier answered coldly, "The Hart family submitted the official paperwork to the crown that we're only carrying out orders. If you want to ask whether there's been a mistake, ask your parents." With that, the soldier seized Di-Win and marched him toward the door. In that moment, Panic flooded Di-Win's chest. He couldn't believe his parents had truly chosen to send him to the battlefield. With a body as frail as his, he wouldn't survive even a single day once he was thrown into a war zone. Why would they do this to him? But when Di-Win instinctively looked back, hoping to find someone behind him who would stop this, all he saw was emptiness in that instant. He understood the truth at last. His family really had abandoned him. And from that day forward, his life plunged into another, even crueler hell. Every single day was endless war. Screams came from every direction, and the sticky stench of blood clung to everything around him. Even so, there was only one thought in Di-Win's heart. He could not die here, and no matter what, he had to survive. And so, after cutting down one enemy after another, that familiar terror came crashing over him once more, and he coughed up mouthful after mouthful of blood. His cursed body was betraying him again, even now, and all Di-Win could think was, when would he ever be able to go home? From that point on, Di-Win's life became one endless cycle, running, avoiding, getting dragged back into battle, and fighting all over again. And somehow, in the middle of that nightmare without end, he survived. It was during that time that Di-Win made up his mind completely. One day, he would wipe out the Hart family, the very people who had shoved him into hell with their own hands. As his consciousness faded under the rebels' chokehold, a vivid scene flashed through his mind. He finally stood before his parents again, his heart filled with an icy calm as he declared, "I came back to pay you a visit." In the vision, he drove his blade straight toward his father without hesitation. And yet, when it was finally over, Di-Win didn't feel the satisfaction he had imagined for so long. Then, when his older brother finally appeared before him as well, he all but lunged at him by instinct, the two of them crashing into a desperate struggle. But in the end, his cursed body gave out first. No, he couldn't collapse here. He had to kill Cruel with his own hands. But just as that murderous intent tightened to its absolute limit, Di-Win suddenly snapped back to reality. He looked around blankly and realized this was the palace banquet hall. The last thing he clearly remembered was being attacked by rebels on the carriage. When had he arrived at the palace? And why had even his clothes already been changed? Standing in the middle of the banquet hall, Di-Win's mind went utterly blank. A moment ago, he had been under attack inside that carriage. And now, somehow, he was standing in the palace in a fresh set of clothes. Had the stress scrambled his memory again? He couldn't remember how he dealt with the rebels, or how he ended up here at all. So, forcing down the unease rising inside him, Di-Win turned to Rainer and asked, "What exactly is this banquet for?" Rainer blinked in surprise, then looked at him strangely as one of the central figures of the event. How could he not know why he was here? Even so, Rainer answered, "This banquet is being held to celebrate the birth of the new hero, Cruel Heart, and the success of your first campaign." The moment he heard Cruel's name, Di-Win's face darkened almost instantly. Those green eyes, so different from his own, that black hair, the unmistakable mark of the Hart family he had once believed he would never have to see again. And the man in front of him was someone he never wanted to face a second time. Then his brother stepped forward and spoke calmly. He said that, during a recent campaign, he had seen Commander Zero in the Demon Realm, and the way that man naturally dominated the atmosphere of the battlefield had reminded him of Di-Win. "I've heard you're good at stirring the mood of a battlefield too, if you've been serving in our army." But before he could finish, Di-Win let out a sudden laugh that cut right through the sentence. "Sorry," he said, pressing a hand lightly to his forehead, though the smile was full of mockery. "It was just so ridiculous that I couldn't help laughing." Then he lifted his head and stared directly at his brother. "I was never going to get the kind of chance you had, to stand on the battlefield and be expected to shine at S.O. There's no point imagining it now." With that, he turned and walked toward the table behind him. Talking to this man any longer was less worthwhile than eating pudding tea, at least the pudding had some value. But while Di-Win was quietly eating, his brother spoke again from behind him. "I heard you went out to subjugate monsters. Were you hurt?" Di-Win's hand stopped in midair. Without even turning around, he answered in a voice so cold it barely sounded human. "My body is my own concern. There's no need for you to pretend to care now, of all times. Even if I were hurt, I'd still make sure not to show it in front of you, brother. So just keep doing what you've always done. Stand off to the side and watch. Just like the day they dragged me off to war, while you stood there and did nothing." In the end, Di-Win let out a low breath, not even bothering to look back. "Forget it. I shouldn't have come to the palace today. What a complete waste." Right then, Duke Illis came over with a smile, slowly clapping his hands. "The bond between you two is certainly memorable." The moment the Duke appeared, Cruel stepped forward at once and gave him a respectful bow. Then Duke Illis extended a hand toward Di-Win. "Count Hart, I believe this is our first proper meeting. I've heard your name often. That it's a pleasure." But Di-Win simply turned his head and ignored the gesture entirely, as if the Duke's hand didn't even exist. That single act instantly sent a ripple through the surrounding crowd. People began whispering in disbelief. A mere honorary count daring to treat the Empire's only Duke like that? Di-Win himself knew perfectly well how rude it looked. The problem was his mouth was still full of pudding, and he couldn't speak without making it worse, and so all he could do was keep chewing and pretend nothing was wrong. But judging from the Duke's expression, it looked like his patience was about to run out. Di-Win was already thinking that maybe he should just swallow the pudding first and at least shake the man's hand afterward. Before he could do that, however, the Crown Prince suddenly appeared and interrupted the whole thing. Di-Win looked at the growing crowd around him and inwardly groaned. What was this place covered in honey? Why was everyone gathering here? No matter what, he needed to recover the situation fast. Yet before he could even open his mouth, the Crown Prince had already stepped in front of him. With a smile that didn't reach his eyes, the prince looked at Duke Illist and said, "Your Grace seems awfully interested in Count Hart the moment you arrive. What exactly are you trying to do?" In an instant, the mood turned sharp. That it was obvious that, in the prince's eyes, the Duke wasn't to be trusted, and Count Hart was someone he intended to protect personally. Di-Win had no idea what kind of political storm had just formed around him, but he did know one thing. This was the perfect chance to swallow the pudding and recover. And then, at the worst possible moment, Princess D-Selt suddenly called his name and threw her arms around him tightly from behind. "Brother is so unfair if he was going to visit Count Hart. He should have brought me too. Count Hart, I really, really missed you." The sudden, forceful impact from behind was too much for Di-Win's already frail and internally injured body. He lost control, coughing up a mouthful of blood mixed with the half-chewed pudding. The Crown Prince's expression changed on the spot, and he immediately shouted for the palace physicians. Di-Win had just started to explain when Rainer quickly covered his bleeding mouth with a handkerchief and said in a grave voice, "Please don't say anything. This is my failure. I should have realized much sooner that Count Hart's condition was this poor." O imperador e o general Nemesius também foram atraídos por aquela comoção repentina. The princess immediately lowered her head in panic. "Your Majesty, this is all my fault. Count Hart coughed blood because of me. I was just too excited and didn't control my strength properly." But the emperor only frowned and said coolly, "Count Hart is a man of hero-class standing. Are you suggesting he coughed blood just because a princess bumped into him?" Rainer calmly took over. Count Hart was attacked on his way to the palace, so he likely suffered internal injuries then. Combined with extreme fatigue, it seems his body simply gave out. At that point, Di-Win could only go along with it and tell the emperor that he merely needed some rest. Whether it was because of stress or not, his body really did seem to be getting worse. But the moment he said that, dizziness struck him hard. His footing slipped, and he nearly collapsed on the spot. His older brother caught him just in time. Yet Di-Win reacted almost instinctively, violently shaking his hand off. "I don't need your help." His brother stared at the hand that had just been thrown aside, a frown slowly forming. What was wrong with him? Why had he been acting like this the whole time? After the banquet ended, Rainer personally accompanied Di-Win back to the Count's estate. But the moment the carriage stopped, Di-Win caught the sharp smell of something burning. He looked up and froze. The mansion before him had already been swallowed by roaring flames. His mind went blank. For an instant, he almost wanted to believe it was a dream. Yes, it had to be a hallucination. His stress had clearly gotten too bad lately. But when he looked again, he realized the lofty knights were already there as well. Just as Di-Win was still trying to figure out what was going on, a bomb suddenly got thrown straight into his hands. Luckily, his reflexes kicked in fast enough, and he hurled it away almost on instinct. As the blast wave exploded outward, Di-Win's mind immediately went off. What kind of rabid lunatics throw bombs around in someone's courtyard? As expected of a hero, he actually caught the bomb we threw at him and sent it right back. Di-Win followed the voice and immediately spotted the symbol on the attacker's sleeves. Rebels, again. Apparently attacking his carriage hadn't been enough for them. Now they had gone after his estate and the lofty knights too. These people really were dead set on killing him. But what exactly had he done to make them go this far? Just then, two wounded men tried to support each other and slip away in the chaos. But old Lambert suddenly moved with shocking speed and took both of them down before they could get far. That was close. Another second and they might have gotten away. Then he turned back to Di-Win, sounding almost impressed. "Count, you've truly surprised these old bones of mine. I thought you'd just stand there and take the hit, but instead you grabbed the bomb and threw it right back. What exactly happened to you at the palace? It's only been half a day, and yet your complexion has gotten much worse." So Rainer explained for him, saying they had been ambushed by rebels on the way to the palace. and that the return trip's exhaustion, combined with the internal injuries from that attack, had probably all crashed down on him at once. After hearing that, Lambert immediately insisted that he would handle the cleanup himself and told Diwin to go back and rest. Just like that, a full week passed since Diwin returned to the Empire. The garden that had been burned into a complete mess was finally more or less restored. Now, until the Emperor summoned him again, Diwin had assumed he could simply rest in peace and maybe enjoy life in the human world for a while. But that, of course, turned out to be nothing more than wishful thinking, because at this very moment, Diwin was buried under a mountain of paperwork. For some reason, ever since that day, he had become completely incapable of firmly refusing Lambert. In fact, if those documents hadn't been personally brought in by Lambert, Diwin probably wouldn't even have bothered looking at them. Because of that, he had actually started to miss the demon realm.t, least over there. Nobody would seriously force him to work through endless piles of paperwork just because he was being lazy. Then Lambert informed him that 1 week earlier, the Emperor had officially transferred the entirety of Heart territory into his name. Hearing that, Diwin froze. He hadn't heard a single word about that beforehand, which meant he now had to figure out a way to give Heart territory back. Honestly, when the Emperor had handed him the title of Count in the first place and dressed it up with that nonsense about making him a border count, Diwin had already stopped arguing. But the real problem was that he hated Heart territory from the bottom of his soul. There wasn't a single memory there worth cherishing. No, more accurately, that place was practically the closest thing in his life to a nightmare. Just then, someone outside came to report that the Crown Prince and General Nemesius had arrived. Diwin immediately frowned. What were they doing here so suddenly? And on top of that, General Nemesius had always disliked him. The moment they entered, the Crown Prince was the first to speak. "I heard the honorary Count Hart captured the rebels who attacked as a stayed alive." "No, seriously, why do you look so miserable again?" Meanwhile, the princess burst into tears. "He probably doesn't even want to look at me anymore, right? It has to be like that. All the effort I've made until now was for nothing. I'm a princess. I've never had to take the initiative with anyone before, so of course I was a little awkward. But I never imagined I'd cause this much trouble." Count Hart even coughed up blood. Should I go apologize to him? But that suggestion was immediately rejected by the Crown Prince. "Normally I wouldn't stop you, but not this time, and no matter how you meet him, it'll turn into a scandal. Wouldn't that actually be better for me? If the scandal becomes an established fact, then maybe it could naturally lead to marriage." Then she showed a strange, calculating little smile. "Even if I don't love Count Hart for the sake of the royal family, I can still make myself like him, even if it has to be done this way. As long as it means keeping a talent like the honorary Count Hart on the royal family's side, no, at His Majesty's side. But before that, could you help me find out what kind of impression I have in Count Hart's heart? If he's upset because of what happened, that would be a problem." That was why the Crown Prince came in person this time. First, he wanted to confirm whether the incident with the princess had made Diwin uncomfortable. Second, he intended to pull him over to the Emperor's side no matter what. Although Diwin was stunned inside, he still stepped forward and greeted them politely. "I'm sorry for showing up like this, so suddenly. I came because there were things I wanted to say to the Count in person." General Nemesius also said he had business to handle. But every time Diwin met General Nemesius's gaze, it felt like it could pierce straight through him. Why exactly did that man hate him so much? Once he learned they had come because of the earlier incident involving the princess, Diwin said that he didn't mind it. Hearing that, the Crown Prince smiled and then told him there was something else he wanted to ask of him. Just as Diwin tensed up, he heard the Crown Prince say that he wanted to be friends with him. "For some time now, I wanted to get closer to you, Count, but you've been so busy that even meeting you once has been difficult. The position of Crown Prince comes with enormous responsibility. I can't do whatever I want, and I can't even casually seek out the people I want to grow close to." Then he awkwardly scratched his head. "So if I could only use what happened at the banquet as an excuse to come see you, does that proposal make you uncomfortable?" Feeling the murderous pressure coming off General Nemesius beside him, Diwin was unwilling in every possible way, but he still forced himself to answer, "It would be an honor to become friends with your highness." At that, the Crown Prince lit up and grabbed Diwin's hand. "Then from today onward, we're friends. From now on, I'll work hard to become even closer to you. Every time you come to the palace, you have to remember to come find me. We can practice swordsmanship together, drink tea together, and even talk heart to heart." Hearing that, Diwin stared with his mouth slightly open in shock. This sounded like an absolute nightmare to deal with. After saying all that, the Crown Prince stood up to leave and told Diwin that General Nemesius still had business with him, so there was no need to see him out. Then General Nemesius rose and got straight to the point. He told Diwin that His Majesty wanted custody of the rebels he had captured in order to identify the rebels' base and wipe them out completely. Of course, you were the one who captured them, Nemesius added coldly. His Majesty also said that if you don't want to hand them over, you may refuse. No, of course I agreed that I'll lead you there myself. Honestly, that kind of directness suited Di-Wen just fine that he had no interest in spending more time than necessary talking to someone who clearly disliked him. So the sooner he sent him off and got some rest, the better. After arriving at the dungeon, Di-Wen personally handed over the rebel he had captured earlier to General Nemesius. But Nemesius spoke in a cold voice. There were clearly 3 rebels involved in the attack on you. 2 of them are already dead. The report states that one of them died in the explosion. But the cause of death for the remaining one doesn't quite add up. Di-Wen Hart, do you know how that man actually died? Nemesius never hated anyone without reason. It was simply that, back during the 8-Year War, he had observed Di-Wen from close range and realized something long before anyone else did. Di-Wen Hart's shifts in temperament were extreme. Back then, it was already unusual enough for a noble to enter the army disguised as an ordinary soldier, that on top of that, Di-Wen had been assigned to Nemesius's own unit, which made him impossible to ignore. That man, whose body was so frail that he should never have survived on the battlefield, ultimately chose cruelty as his method of survival to stay alive. He slaughtered countless people without hesitation, like someone on the edge of madness. But after every battle, crushing guilt would come crashing down on him. In the end, it was almost as if he had split himself into separate parts. No, calling it split personalities might not even be precise enough. The way he seemed able to switch between them so freely made it more accurate to describe them as distinct states of temperament. One was a blood-soaked madman focused only on survival and savage combat. The other was a normal self who only remembered wanting an ordinary life and existed only in his everyday state. When faced with Nemesius' question, Di-Wen didn't let his expression shift. He answered calmly. Coincidentally, I wasn't there at the time, so I don't know exactly how he died. That I heard maybe a wild dog got him. Hearing that, Nemesius' gaze turned colder. He didn't continue pressing the issue. Instead, he turned and walked away in grim silence. As expected, this man still hadn't changed at all, as if wild dogs would ever get inside Count Hart's estate. The excuse was laughable. That it was obvious Di-Wen had killed that man himself. And this time too, he had probably relied on that same revolting yet convenient state of mind, which was why, in Nemesius' eyes, Di-Wen Hart remained an extremely dangerous man. And because of that, one question continued to linger in Nemesius' mind. Why did His Majesty insist on keeping someone like Di-Wen Hart so close?